The humid air hangs thick with a cloying scent of expensive lilies and something sickly sweet from the dessert table. Pink balloons bob against the ceiling like monstrous, detached hearts. Laughter rings out, sharp and brittle, the sound of women performing joy. My smile feels stitched onto my face, a flimsy mask melting in the manufactured warmth of this room. It's Bridget's bridal shower. My sister. She's radiant, they say. Glowing. A vision in white lace, even now, weeks before the actual wedding. She holds court by the mimosa bar, surrounded by a flock of friends I barely know, women who compliment her loudly, performatively. I stand a little apart, by the window, watching sunlight splinter on the condensation of my glass. I can feel her eyes on me, even across the room, a familiar weight. Then, she's moving through the crowd, a swan gliding through shallower water. She's beside me now, her smile still plastered on, but her eyes cold. There's a stillness in her, a predatory pause I know all too well. The air around us seems to thin, the ambient noise of the party receding to a dull hum. She leans in, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for me, the scent of lilies suddenly suffocating. "Look at all this," she murmurs, gesturing vaguely with one perfectly manicured hand towards the room, the gifts piled high, the sheer overwhelming abundance of it all. Her eyes meet mine, and the smile finally cracks, revealing something sharp and utterly devoid of warmth. "You'll never have this life." The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. They don't just land. They burrow deep, vibrating with years of unspoken history, a lifetime of being found wanting. My blood turns to ice. The room, moments ago just slightly too warm, feels arctic. I can only stare at her, frozen, the forced smile surely gone from my own face. If you've ever felt a cold truth whispered in your ear, a truth designed specifically to cut you down, tell me about it in the comments. I read all of them. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. My normal life, before the endless pink and the cloying lilies, felt solid. Simple, perhaps, compared to Bridget's trajectory, but mine. I had built it deliberately, brick by quiet brick. I worked a steady job, nothing glamorous, nothing that made headlines, but it paid the bills and left room for breathing. My apartment was small but filled with sunlight and books and the smell of coffee in the morning. And I had Liam. Liam. He wasn't some flashy executive or a doctor or a lawyer, the kinds of men Bridget always seemed to attract. He was a journalist, working for a local news station, quiet and observant, with a kindness that felt like warm stone after years of chipping ice. We met covering a mundane city council meeting, a place Bridget would have found utterly beneath her notice. He saw me, not as the quiet sister in the background, but as me. He saw the things I cared about, the dry humor I usually kept hidden, the way I looked at the world. Bridget and we were close in proximity growing up, sharing a bedroom for years, but separated by something vast and unbridgeable in personality. She was the sun, bright and demanding, pulling all the light towards her. I was the moon, content to orbit, to reflect a softer glow, to find my own path in the quiet spaces. Our parents, well-meaning but easily dazzled by Bridget's effortless charm and early successes, encouraged her shine. My achievements, quieter, more internal, often went unnoticed or were met with a casual, "That's nice, dear," before the conversation swung back to Bridget's latest triumph. It built a dynamic, subtle at first, then hardening over the years. Bridget the star, me the supporting character. Her wedding wasn't just a wedding, it was set to be an event. She had landed, the perfect man, a successful real estate developer with family money and a yacht. The kind of man who appeared in the society pages. Their engagement announcement had been in the local paper, a small picture of them looking radiant, superimposed over a breathless paragraph about their family's merging fortunes and influence. Bridget had sent me a copy, circled the paragraph, and attached a post-it note that simply said, "Finally, not finally, I'm getting married, but finally," as if she had completed a complex transaction or won a particularly challenging game. The planning began almost immediately, a whirlwind of designer dresses, exclusive venues, and tastings for food I couldn't pronounce. Bridget would call, ostensibly to update me, but the conversations always circled back to comparisons. My dress costs more than your car. Did you know that? Or, we're having a live band and a DJ. None of those terrible Spotify playlists for us, or my personal favorite after I mention Liam. Oh, is he still at the local station? That's sweet. So quaint. It wasn't just about the money or the extravagance. It was the undercurrent, the constant, unspoken jab. My life is bigger, better, more important than yours. My desires felt small and insignificant next to her grand pronouncements. I wanted quiet Sundays with Liam, a home filled with books, the security of knowing someone truly saw me. Bridget seemed to want an audience, a stage, a life that was not just lived, but performed for maximum effect. Her happiness felt conditional on its outward presentation and, perhaps, on my own perceived lack of it. The inciting incident wasn't a single moment, but the insidious creep of her wedding becoming a referendum on my own life. Every conversation about flower arrangements was also a subtle critique of my own perceived lack of taste. Every mention of her fiancé's success was a quiet dismissal of Liam's more grounded profession. She was building her castle not just for herself, but partly, I suspected, to cast a long, dismissive shadow over my own humble cottage. Early struggles meant navigating the planning with a smile, congratulating her on choices that felt ostentatious and empty to me, biting back responses to her barbed comments. It meant listening to her drone on about place settings and seating charts while my own life, the one I was quietly building with Liam, felt increasingly invisible. I tried. I really did. I offered to help with tasks she deemed beneath her. I listened patiently to endless vendor complaints. I even feigned enthusiasm for things like the 10-tier cake. But every interaction felt like chipping away at a wall she was actively reinforcing between us. It was exhausting. The forced cheerfulness felt like wearing ill-fitting armor. I'd go home after helping her with something, feeling drained and small, and Liam would just hold me. He didn't try to offer platitudes or tell me I was imagining it. He saw it too. He saw the way Bridget's energy seemed to consume mine, the way her words, casually delivered, could leave bruises I hid. "She's a lot," he said gently one evening, watching me pick at my food after a particularly draining phone call with her about bridesmaid dress colors. "That's an understatement," I mumbled. "Why does she do it?" he asked, not accusatorially but with genuine curiosity. "Why does she need to make you feel small?" I shrugged, unable to articulate the tangled mess of sibling rivalry, parental dynamics, and Bridget's own probable insecurities that I suspected were at play. "Maybe it makes her feel bigger," I offered. He reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb tracing lines on my palm. "Her bigness doesn't diminish yours," he said, his voice steady. "Or ours." That was a midpoint shift, I realize now. Not a dramatic event, but a quiet, internal recalibration. Liam's simple words cut through the noise Bridget constantly generated. Her world of outward validation felt flimsy next to the quiet strength of our connection. Her need to tear down didn't reflect my worth. It reflected her own. I wasn't the problem. Her behavior was. And I didn't have to let it define me or define my life. The rising challenges came as the shower date loomed. Bridget became more intensely focused on the optics of the event. The guest list was curated not just for friendship, but for status. She talked incessantly about the local news channel that would be doing a small segment on a fairy tale wedding. Theirs, of course. She wanted everything to be perfect, a flawless tableau. This pressure seemed to amplify her worst traits. She snapped at vendors, micromanaged her friends, and directed thinly veiled criticisms at me with increasing frequency. "Are you even bringing a gift from the registry?" she asked one day, her voice laced with suspicion. "Or something crafty?" The implication was clear. My gift would be cheap and poorly made. "I got something," I said, keeping my voice even. I had, of course. Something thoughtful, and yes, from the ridiculously expensive registry. "Make sure you look presentable at the shower," she instructed, as if speaking to a child. "No mapping." Smile. The deepening crisis arrived in the week leading up to the shower. Everything felt overwhelming. My job had unexpected stress, my car broke down, and Bridget's demands and subtle jabs intensified daily. It felt like the universe was conspiring with her, piling on the small defeats. I looked at her life, projected everywhere on social media. The bachelorette party in Miami, the designer fittings, the gushing posts about her perfect fiancé, and then at my own quiet struggles, and for a few dark days, her words echoed in my head, "You'll never have this life." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was destined for something smaller, something that would never command attention, never be celebrated with this much fanfare.
The thought was a lead weight in my chest.
I felt a cold wave of despair, a sense of being utterly overshadowed, my own quiet happiness feeling suddenly inadequate, almost pathetic. The day of the shower dawned bright and cruel. As I got dressed, carefully choosing an outfit that felt like me but also wouldn't invite criticism, I felt a profound weariness. I didn't want to go. I wanted to curl up in bed with Liam and forget the world of lilies and fake smiles existed. But I had to go. For appearance's sake, for our parents, because not showing up would be its own kind of statement, one I wasn't ready to make.
Yet.
Standing by that window, feeling Bridget's gaze, watching her approach, I knew this was it. The culmination of weeks of subtle torment, years of ingrained dynamics. She had sought me out specifically to deliver this final blow, surrounded by the physical manifestation of everything she deemed successful, everything she believed I lacked. Her whisper, "You'll never have this life." In that frozen moment, the air thin and cold around us, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just hurt this time. It was clarity, like a cold, sharp knife cutting through the fog of self-doubt she had tried to dissolve. Her words weren't a statement of fact about my future. They were a desperate wish about her own. She needed me to believe I would never have this, or anything like it, because her own carefully constructed happiness felt fragile. It wasn't about my lack, it was about her fear. Fear that maybe her life wasn't as perfect as it seemed, that maybe my quiet, authentic happiness was more resilient than her flashy performance. The turning point wasn't a sudden burst of anger, but a quiet, stealing resolve. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I wouldn't let her define my life, my worth, or my future. I had Liam. We had built something real, something strong, something that didn't need an audience to validate its existence. And in that instant, staring into her cold, triumphant eyes, I made a decision. I would stand in the truth of my own life. I wouldn't hide anymore. Before I could even formulate a response to her cruel whisper, before the smile could fully reform on her face, I felt a presence beside me.
Warm, salid, familiar. Liam.
He had been talking to our parents, who were beaming and navigating the room with a slightly bewildered air of people unused to such extravagance. He'd seen Bridget approach, seen her lean in. He didn't know exactly what she'd said, but he knew that look on her face, and he knew the tension radiating from me. He smiled at Bridget, a genuine, easy smile that somehow felt like a challenge to her forced one. "Bridget," he said, his voice cutting through the lingering silence between us. "Beautiful shower." She blinked, momentarily thrown by his sudden appearance.
Liam.
"Yes, it is, isn't it?" Very traditional, the word traditional hung in the air, another subtle dig, implying our life was what? Untraditional? Less than. Liam didn't react to the barb. He just kept smiling, his eyes on mine for a brief, reassuring moment. Then he turned back to the room, his gaze sweeping over the guests.
And I saw it then.
The small local news camera crew over by the entrance, packing up their equipment after getting their shot of the fairy tale bride-to-be. One of the crew members, the reporter, caught Liam's eye and gave him a small nod. They knew him. They worked with him. My heart started to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs. What was he doing? Liam cleared his throat, his voice rising slightly, projecting just enough to catch the attention of those nearby. "Actually," he said, a mischievous glint in his eye as he glanced back at the camera crew, who were now watching him with interest, pausing their packing. "Before they leave, There was something else I wanted to share. Bridget's head snapped towards him, her smile faltering completely. She had been so focused on her own moment, her own performance, she hadn't even noticed the camera crew were technically still here. She opened her mouth, presumably to shut him down, to redirect the attention back to her, where it belonged. But Liam didn't wait. He took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine, and turned slightly so we were both facing the room, facing the lingering camera lens. The reporter, sensing a moment, nodded to the cameraman, and the red light flickered back on.
Live.
They were still live for a brief, local update. Liam looked at me, his eyes full of a love so clear and unwavering it felt like armor against the world.
He squeezed my hand.
Then he looked out at the room, at the sea of faces, and his voice, usually quiet, rang out, steady and strong. "I know we're here to celebrate Bridget and Mark," he began, and Bridget visibly puffed up, reclaiming her spotlight. "But I wanted to take a moment in front of all of you, and especially in front of the people who matter most to us." His gaze swept past Bridget and landed on my parents, who looked utterly confused. "To share some wonderful news of our own." Bridget froze. Utterly, completely frozen in place beside me, her face a mask of stunned disbelief. Her carefully constructed smile shattered. Her mouth hung slightly open. "Because," Liam continued, his voice warm and joyous, "while Bridget is planning her beautiful wedding, we've been planning ours." He turned to me, his eyes shining, and said, for everyone to hear, the words we had only spoken to each other until now, the promise we had held close, away from the noise and the judgment. "We're getting married. Next month. It's small, just close family and friends." He paused, and his smile widened, a pure, unadulterated happiness. "We couldn't be happier." He didn't look at Bridget. His focus was entirely on me, on the future he was announcing, the future we were building together. The room erupted. Not with a controlled, polite applause for Bridget's gifts, but with a wave of gasps, surprised murmurs, and then genuine cheers from the corners where my few friends and family members stood. My parents, initially shocked, were now beaming, pushing through the crowd towards us. Bridget didn't move. She just stood there, utterly blindsided. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and vacant. The camera light glowed red, broadcasting her stunned silence, her public dethroning from the center of attention, live on local television. The perfect bride, frozen mid-performance, her carefully curated world momentarily tilting on its axis. The words she had whispered to me, intended to wound and diminish, now hung impotent in the air. "You'll never have this life." But I wasn't just having this life. I was having my life. One built on something real, something announced not with fanfare and ego, but with quiet joy and unwavering love. And I had just announced it on live TV, completely hijacking her moment, not out of spite, but out of a fierce, sudden need to claim my own space, my own happiness, on my own terms. The climax wasn't a fight, but a declaration. It was the sound of Liam's voice, strong and clear, cutting through the noise of Bridget's carefully orchestrated party. It was the sight of Bridget's face, stripped bare of its practiced composure, revealing the shock and fury beneath. It was the feeling of Liam's hand in mine, grounding me, giving me strength. I wasn't frozen by her cruelty anymore. I was anchored by his love. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The reporter, bless her opportunistic heart, pivoted instantly, rushing over to Liam with the camera crew trailing behind. "Liam, this is incredible. Can you tell us more?" Bridget's friends clustered around her, whispering anxiously, trying to shield her from the unexpected media attention now focused entirely on me and Liam. Our parents reached us, hugging us tightly, tears in my mother's eyes. Bridget finally seemed to snap out of her stupor. She stumbled towards us, her voice tight and sharp. "What are you doing? You can't just..." Liam turned to her, his expression calm but firm. "Bridget, we're getting married. This is how we're sharing the news." "But the shower..." "My shower," she hissed, her eyes darting frantically between us and the camera crew now interviewing Liam. The mask was completely gone, replaced by raw, ugly possessiveness over her event. I stepped forward, my voice quiet but steady. "Yes, your shower," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "And our announcement for the first time all day." I didn't feel small. I felt tall.
Solid.
She glared at me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of something else beneath the anger. Betrayal? Hurt. But it was quickly masked by fury. She didn't say anything else, just spun around and stalked away, her white lace a stark contrast to the pink balloons, her exit far less graceful than her entrance. Her friends followed, a murmuring cloud of silk and judgment. Liam finished the brief interview, managing to sound genuinely happy and excited, thanking the reporter for the unexpected opportunity. We were surrounded by well-wishers, genuine smiles now replacing the forced ones. It felt like a weight had lifted. The air was easier to breathe. Walking out of that house, leaving the lilies and the wreckage of Bridget's perfect moment behind, felt like walking into sunlight after a long, cold winter. Liam held my hand, and we just smiled at each other. Later, the segment aired on the local news. It started with a shot of Bridget looking radiant, the reporter talking about the upcoming society wedding event. Then it cut to Liam, standing beside me, making his announcement. The camera panned briefly to Bridget's face, that split second of pure, unadulterated shock, before cutting back to us smiling. The contrast was stark. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages. Friends, family, even distant acquaintances. All surprised, all excited. And a precious few, messages that simply said, "About time." The relationship with Bridget, it changed, of course. Profoundly. There wasn't a dramatic confrontation afterwards, no tearful reconciliation. Just distance. A chilling silence that fell between us. She never spoke about the shower again. When we saw each other at family gatherings, rarely now. It was polite, strained. The shared history was still there, but it was overlaid with this new, unaddressed truth. Her initial prediction, "You'll never have this life," had backfired spectacularly. I didn't want her life. I had my life. A life built on love and mutual respect, not on performance and comparison. And that, I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, was a victory far sweeter and more lasting than any staged moment in front of a camera. The irony wasn't lost on me. She wanted headlines, a public spectacle of her success. And in the end, she got one. Just not the one she intended. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version in the comments. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.